Everything around you keeps getting cheaper. Phones, clothes, electronics, furniture. And at first, that feels like progress. But here's the question nobody wants to ask. What happens when people become the most expensive part of the system? Welcome to Finance Mysteries, where money, power, and history collide, and nothing is as simple as it looks. That is the China trap, and once you understand it, you cannot look at cheap prices the same way again. The story the world believed. For decades, we were told a simple story. Cheap means efficiency. Cheap means growth. Cheap means everyone wins. Lower prices were presented as proof that the global economy was improving. More people could afford more things. Life seemed easier. And for a while, it worked. Millions of people gained access to technology, clothing, and tools their parents never had. Companies expanded rapidly. Governments pointed to growth numbers and called it success. But cheap never meant free. It only meant the cost was hidden. How China became essential to the world. China's rise was not accidental. It was planned. It was disciplined. It was long-term. Factories were not just built. Entire cities were designed around manufacturing. Millions of people moved from rural villages into industrial zones. Work hours were long. Pay was low. Living conditions were basic. But the goal was clear. Endure now. Dominate later. As production scaled, prices around the world collapsed. A shirt that once cost $20 now cost $5. Electronics became cheaper every year. Shipping containers moved non-stop across oceans. Companies benefited. Consumers benefited. Governments applauded. China did not just join globalization, it became the backbone of it. The real weapon China used. China's biggest advantage was not technology or speed. It was endurance. Factories operated on extremely thin margins. Sometimes they earned almost nothing. Sometimes they earned nothing at all. Most businesses cannot survive like that, but China could, and that changed everything. Factories in the United States closed. Manufacturing towns in Europe declined. Local industries across the world disappeared quietly, not because they were inefficient, but because they could not compete with prices that low. China did not defeat competitors by being better. It defeated them by lasting longer. When success becomes a prison. Becoming the world's factory looked like ultimate power, but it came with a hidden cost. When your economy depends on low prices, you lose flexibility. Low prices mean low profit margins. Low margins require massive production volume. This creates constant pressure to grow. There is no pause. There is no slowdown. There is no room for error. This is not stability. It is dependency disguised as strength. And the better China became at producing cheap goods, the harder it became to escape this system. The moment the model started to break. Eventually, reality caught up. Workers began demanding higher wages, not luxury wages, just enough to live. Rent increased. Food prices rose. Cities became expensive. China was no longer cheap. Factories faced an impossible decision. If wages increased, production costs increased. If prices increased, global buyers looked elsewhere. If prices stayed low, factories lost money. There was no solution that worked long-term. The very advantage that built China's rise was disappearing. What the China trap really means. The China trap is not just about economics. It's about identity. When the world knows you only as cheap, you become trapped by expectations. Buyers don't care about your workers. They don't care about sustainability. They don't care about long-term stability. They care about price. The moment your prices rise, loyalty disappears. This makes transformation extremely difficult. Innovation requires investment. Investment requires profit. Profit is impossible when margins are razor-thin. How cheapness damages everything around it. Low prices don't only hurt factories, they reshape entire systems. When profit margins are thin, companies avoid risk. Innovation slows. Creativity becomes dangerous.
Product quality declines because durability reduces repeat sales. Items are designed to fail. Replacement becomes the business model. Waste increases, pollution rises, efficiency turns into extraction. China did not just produce cheap goods, it absorbed the environmental and social cost of global consumption. Why factories are leaving China now? Today, factories are moving again, to Vietnam, to India, to Bangladesh, to Mexico. Not because these countries are more advanced, because they're cheaper. The same logic repeats. Factories don't leave behind progress, they leave behind unemployment, empty buildings, and fragile communities. And when the next country becomes too expensive, the cycle repeats again. This is not sustainable growth, it is pressure migration. The illusion consumers never question. From the outside, everything still looks fine. Prices remain low, options keep expanding, delivery keeps getting faster. But consider this, if prices always fall, where does the cost go? It doesn't disappear. It is taken from labor, from environmental stability, from long-term resilience. Cheap feels good because the damage is distant, until it reaches you. China did not fail, it won too hard. China did not lose this system, it mastered it. It became so efficient at being cheap that the world became dependent on it. But dependence creates fragility. A pandemic, a trade war, a shipping delay. Suddenly, global supply chains collapse. A system built on cheap has no margin for shock. Why this is a warning to any country. This is not a story about China alone. It's a warning to any economy that relies on only low cost. If your only advantage is being cheaper than others, your future is temporary. Someone will always work for less, accept lower standards, cut deeper corners. When that happens, you become replaceable. The real problem behind cheap prices. The world doesn't have a China problem, it has a value problem. We optimized for low prices instead of resilience, for speed instead of durability, for consumption instead of sustainability. And the result is a global system that looks efficient but breaks easily. The final realization. The next time you see something unbelievably cheap, pause. Ask yourself a different question. If this costs so little, who paid the real price? Because when everything becomes cheap, something valuable is always being spent. And once an economy is built entirely on cheapness, escaping it may be impossible. If this changed how you see prices, power, and globalization, that reaction is normal. These forces are quiet, they are patient, and once you notice them, you'll start seeing them everywhere.